I lay paralyzed in that hospital bed, forcing myself not to blink, while my children stood over me and discussed selling my life's work for scraps. They thought I was a vegetable. They didn't know I could hear every word. I heard them plan to liquidate my construction empire, sell my home, and dump their own mother in a state-run facility just to get their hands on my money faster. So, the night before they were going to sign the papers to legally erase me, I didn't just wake up, I disappeared. When my son arrived the next morning to claim his fortune, he found an empty bed, a pile of janitor's clothes, and a realization that his inheritance was now exactly $0. Before I tell you exactly where I went, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and please subscribe if you believe that you should never bite the hand that feeds you. We have to be realistic, Marcus said, and I heard the click of his lighter. He was smoking in a hospital room. That was Marcus. Rules were for other people. Mom cannot live in that big house alone. The upkeep is $20,000 a month. The taxes alone are a fortune. We need that liquidity, Kendra. It is her home, Marcus, Kendra said softly. She planted those rose bushes out front. She designed the kitchen. It is an asset, Marcus corrected her, his voice sharp like a whip. It is a depreciating asset if we do not maintain it, and we cannot maintain it if Dad is vegetable. Look at him. He is not coming back. The stroke took out half his brain. Even if he wakes up, he will be drooling in a cup. Do you want to spend your inheritance on nurses and feeding tubes? Inheritance. There it was. The magic word. They weren't burying a father. They were cashing a check. I felt a tear try to form in the corner of my eye, but I fought it back. I would not give them the satisfaction of seeing me cry. I thought about the day I bought that house in the Gold Coast. It was $1,995. I drove Loretta up the driveway in a rented convertible. I covered her eyes with my hands. When I took them away, she screamed. She didn't believe it was ours. We were just two kids from the South Side who scrapped and saved. And there we were, standing in front of a mansion that looked like a castle. Now, my son wanted to sell our castle to pay for his mistakes. Shady Grove is not that bad, Marcus continued, his voice dropping lower, conspiring. I know the director. He owes me a favor. He can get her a private room on the second floor. It has a window. A window, I thought. A window overlooking an alley full of dumpsters. Shady Grove was where people went to die when they had nobody left to love them. It was a place of gray walls and cold oatmeal and loneliness. Putting Loretta there was a death sentence. She was a woman of dignity. She wore her Sunday hats with pride. She cooked feasts for the whole neighborhood. To lock her away in a place like that was not just cruel. It was evil. I am not sure, Marcus, Kendra said. Mom is strong. She might fight us. She won't fight if she thinks it is what Dad wanted, Marcus said. And the lie came out of his mouth so easily, it made my blood freeze. We tell her Dad set it up before the accident. We tell her the money is tight, and this is the only way to save the business. She will do anything for the business. She thinks it is his legacy. They were going to use my name, my legacy, to trick the woman I loved more than life itself. They were going to weaponize her loyalty against her. That was the moment the last thread of connection snapped. I lay there, listening to the hum of the machines, and I felt something die inside my chest. It wasn't my heart, because that was still beating strong with rage. It was the father in me. The father who forgave. The father who made excuses. The father who wrote checks to cover up messes. That father died right there in bed 404. What about the business? Kendra asked. Dante says the construction market is volatile right now. He thinks we should sell the equipment and the contracts. Dante, I thought bitterly. Of course that snake was involved. My son-in-law had never worked a hard day in his life. He had soft hands and a silver tongue. He looked at my excavators and my cranes and he didn't see tools to build a city. He saw scrap metal he could turn into cash for his failed investment schemes. Dante is right, Marcus agreed. I already have a buyer lined up for the heavy machinery. A guy from Detroit. He is offering 60 cents on the dollar, but it is cash, Kendra. Fast cash. We can have $3 million in the bank by next Friday if we move now. $3 million. They were selling my life's work for pennies. 40 years of sweat. 40 years of waking up at 4 in the morning. 40 years of missing birthdays and anniversaries to make sure the concrete cured right. They were going to liquidate it all in a week to get quick cash. Why do they need cash so fast, I wondered. I had left them trust funds. I had given them allowances that were bigger than most people's salaries. What kind of trouble were they in? I got a glimpse of the answer a second later. Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a long, angry vibration against the bedside table. I have to take this, Marcus muttered. It is the guy. He walked toward the door, but he didn't leave the room completely. He stood just inside the doorway. I strained my ears. I focused every ounce of energy I had on hearing that conversation. Yeah, I am here, Marcus whispered, his voice tight with panic. No, listen to me. I need more time. The old man is still breathing. I can't access the main accounts until he is declared incompetent or dead. He paused, listening to someone screaming on the other end. I know what I promised, Marcus said, and now he sounded like a frightened child. Tuesday. Give me until Tuesday. I will have the first installment. I swear. If you touch me again, I can't pay you anything. He hung up. He walked back to the bed. I could hear his breathing. It was ragged, fast. He was terrified. My son wasn't just greedy. He was in debt, deep debt, dangerous debt. That was why he was so desperate to sell the company. That was why he wanted to dump his mother in a cheap nursing home. He was trying to save his own skin. He was willing to sacrifice us, his parents, the people who gave him everything, just to clean up his own mess. Everything became crystal clear. The stroke I had suffered wasn't just a medical event. It was an opportunity for them. They saw me fall, and instead of rushing to catch me, they started checking my pockets. I felt a strange calm settle over me. It was the calm of a general looking at a battlefield. I knew the enemy now. The enemy wasn't the blood clot in my brain. The enemy was standing right there, smelling of expensive musk and fear. I had to get better. I had to get strong, and I had to do it without them knowing. If they knew I was awake, if they knew I understood their plan, they would accelerate everything. They might even try to help me die a little faster. I had seen it happen in the movies, but I never thought I would fear it from my own flesh and blood. I relaxed my muscles. I let my jaw go slack. I slowed my breathing until it matched the rhythmic hiss of the ventilator. I became the vegetable they wanted me to be. Let's go, Marcus said to Kendra. The doctor is coming in for rounds soon. We don't want to be here. I have a meeting with the lawyer to draft the power of attorney. You really think the lawyer will sign off on it? Kendra asked. Franklin has been with Dad for 30 years. He is loyal. Franklin works for the money, Marcus said dismissively. And once I control the accounts, I am the one who pays him. He will fall in line. Everyone falls in line when the checkbook opens. They walked toward the door. I heard the click of Kendra's heels and the heavy thud of Marcus's dress shoes. Bye, Dad, Kendra whispered. It sounded like an apology, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. The door closed. The silence rushed back in, heavy and thick. But I wasn't alone in the dark anymore. I had my anger. I had my plan. And I had a name for what I was going to do. They wanted a ghost? Fine, I would be the ghost. I would haunt them until every secret was exposed, until every dollar was accounted for, and until justice was served cold. Right here in this hospital room. The door clicked shut and the silence settled over me like a heavy wool blanket. The only sound was the rhythmic hiss of the ventilator and the steady beep of the heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. It was a lonely sound. It was the sound of time running out. I lay there in the sterile gloom, and I felt the weight of my own body pressing down on the mattress. I was trapped. My arms were dead weights. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. I was a prisoner in my own skin. But while my body was frozen, my mind was traveling. It traveled back in time, back through the years, back to the cold. I remembered the winter of 1982. I was 24 years old. I was working on a foundation crew in the South Loop. The wind off Lake Michigan was a physical thing. It was a razor that cut through your clothes and sliced right into your bones. I didn't have thermal gear back then. I had a thin denim jacket and 2 pairs of socks that were full of holes. I remembered looking at my hands one morning before work. My knuckles were cracked and bleeding. The cold had turned my skin into alligator hide. I couldn't even make a fist because the skin would split open. I remembered the pain of picking up that first frozen brick of the day. It felt like grabbing a block of dry ice. But I picked it up, and then I picked up another, and another. I laid 500 bricks that day, and the next day I laid 600. I did it because I had a wife who was pregnant and a refrigerator that was empty. I did it because I was a man, and a man provides. A man builds a wall between his family and the cold, hard world. Then I thought about the hand that had touched my forehead just minutes ago. Marcus. My son. His hand was soft. It was smooth like silk. It was warm and manicured. He used expensive lotion. He had never held a rough brick in his life. He had never felt the bite of a Chicago winter morning with no gloves. He had never known what it felt like to be so tired that your bones vibrated when you lay down at night. I did that. I made his hand soft. I thought it was love. I remembered the day he turned 16. I bought him a brand new car. A Mustang. Red. Convertible. I put a big bow on it. I wanted to see his face light up. I wanted to give him the freedom I never had at his age. When I was 16, I was taking 3 buses to get to a dishwashing job. Marcus looked at the car and he smiled. But it wasn't a smile of gratitude. It was a smile of expectation. He expected the car, just like he expected the gas card, just like he expected the insurance to be paid. "Thanks, Dad," he said, and then he asked if it had the upgraded sound system. I felt a pang of regret so sharp it almost stopped my heart. I remembered the nights I didn't come home, the nights Loretta ate dinner alone because I was at a site meeting with architects, the school plays I missed because I was flying to New York to secure a loan, the soccer games where my chair was empty because I was fighting with zoning boards. I told myself I was doing it for them. I told myself I was buying them a future. I was building a kingdom for my prince and princess. But a kingdom given is not the same as a kingdom earned. I remembered the tuition checks, $50,000 a year for private school, then college, then the MBA. I paid for it all. I bought his way into the best universities. I donated a new wing to the library so they would look past his mediocre grades. I smoothed every road. I leveled every hill. I removed every obstacle so my son could walk a straight path to success. And what did I get for it? I got a son who couldn't walk at all. I got a cripple. I had crippled him with my money. I had taken away his struggle, and in doing so I had taken away his strength. You cannot build muscle if you never lift a heavy weight. Marcus had never lifted anything heavier than a golf club. And now, when the weight of the world was finally on his shoulders with his gambling debts and his fear, he was crumbling. He was panicking. And in his panic, he was turning on the only people who had ever truly loved him. He wasn't a wolf. He was a jackal. Wolves hunt. Jackals scavenge. And my son was scavenging the carcass of my life before I was even dead. The realization washed over me with a terrible clarity. It wasn't entirely his fault. It was mine. I had fed him the poison. I had spoon-fed him the entitlement day after day, year after year. I thought I was being a good father. I thought I was breaking the cycle of poverty. But I had just started a new cycle, a cycle of weakness, a cycle of greed. I thought about Kendra, my sweet little girl. I remembered brushing her hair when she was 5. She wanted to be a princess. Well, I made her a princess. I bought her the pony. I bought her the clothes. I bought her the apartment in the city so she wouldn't have to have roommates. I shielded her from every hard truth. I never let her see me worry about payroll. I never let her see me sweat. To her, money was just magic. You swiped a card and things appeared. Now, she was married to a man who saw her as an ATM machine, and she didn't have the spine to stand up to him. She was letting Dante whisper in her ear. She was letting him dismantle her father's legacy because she didn't know how to fight. I had never taught her how to fight. The regret was a physical pain in my gut. It hurt more than the stroke. It hurt more than the betrayal. I had spent 40 years building skyscrapers that could withstand earthquakes and hurricanes, but I had built a family on a foundation of sand. I lay there in the dark and I let the tears finally come. They were hot and salty, and they slid down my temples into the pillow. I cried for the boy I was who thought money was the answer to everything. I cried for the wife I had left alone too many nights, and I cried for the children I had ruined with my own 2 hands. But as the tears dried, a new feeling took their place. Resolve. It wasn't too late. I was still here. My heart was still beating. My mind was still working. I had made a mess of raising them, but I could still teach them one last lesson. It would be the hardest lesson of their lives. It would be a lesson about value, about respect, about what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. I wasn't going to give them the company. I wasn't going to give them the money. I wasn't going to give them the easy way out. Not this time. This time, I was going to give them exactly what I had when I started. Nothing. I was going to let them feel the cold wind. I was going to let them feel the rough brick. I was going to let them see if they could build their own walls or if they would just freeze to death. The machine beeped steadily next to me. It sounded like a countdown now. A countdown to the moment I would rise from this bed. A countdown to the moment Isaiah Washington would stop being a father and start being a judge. I closed my eyes tighter and focused on my right hand. The hand that had laid 1,000,000 bricks. The hand that had signed 1,000 checks. I focused all my will, all my anger, all my love and all my hate into that one hand. Move, I commanded it. Move. And under the sheet ever, so slightly my index finger twitched. That tiny movement of my finger was a secret victory. A solitary flag planted on the summit of a mountain I had been climbing for weeks in the dark. It was proof that the connection wasn't gone. It was just frayed. It was just weak. But before I could try again, before I could try to lift my hand or open my eyes, the heavy oak door to my room swung open. The air in the room changed instantly. The sterile smell of the hospital was invaded by the sharp scent of nervous sweat and stale tobacco. Marcus was back. He didn't walk in this time. He stormed in. He paced back and forth at the foot of my bed. I could hear his shoes scuffing against the linoleum. Scuff, turn, scuff, turn, like a caged animal. He was breathing hard, short, shallow breaths that rattled in his chest. He was alone in the room with me, but he was talking to someone. He had his phone pressed to his ear, and his voice was a mixture of whisper and scream. "I am trying," he hissed into the phone. "I am trying, Sal. You have to believe me." Sal. The name landed in my mind like a heavy stone. I knew a Sal once, back in the 70s. Sal, the Hammer Moretti. He was a loan shark who operated out of a butcher shop on the west side. If you didn't pay Sal, you didn't just get a late fee. You got a visit. And now my son, my golden boy with the MBA and the silk ties, was talking to a man named Sal. "I don't have the cash liquid right now," Marcus pleaded. His voice cracked. It was pathetic. It was the sound of a man who was watching his life crumble. "It is all tied up in the estate. My father is in a coma, Sal. He is practically dead. The doctors say it is a matter of days. He was selling my death. He was using my heartbeat as collateral." "No, don't come to the hospital," Marcus begged. "Please, do not come here. My sister is here. The lawyers are here. If you show up, it ruins everything. I need a week. Just 1 week. Once the old man is declared incompetent, I get power of attorney. I can access the construction accounts. I can wire you the $4 million. $4 million. The number echoed in my head. 4 million. That wasn't just a bad weekend in Vegas. That wasn't just a few bad bets on the ponies. That was deep, systemic rot. That was years of living a lie. How had he managed to hide a hole that big? I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with my condition. My son wasn't just a failure. He was a fraud. He had been smiling at Sunday dinners, drinking my wine, and playing with his nieces while he was drowning in a debt that could get us all killed. I listened as the voice on the other end of the line must have been threatening him. Marcus stopped pacing. He stood perfectly still at the foot of my bed. "I know," he whispered. "I know what happens if I don't pay. You don't have to tell me about the knees, Sal. I know." He was terrified. I could feel his fear radiating off him like heat from a pavement in July, and in that moment, the danger shifted. Before this phone call, I was worried about my legacy. I was worried about Loretta's house. I was worried about the business. But now, I was worried about our lives. A man who owes $4 million to a loan shark is a dangerous man. A man who is terrified of having his knees shattered is capable of anything. If I didn't die fast enough, would Marcus help me along? The thought was so dark I wanted to push it away. I wanted to believe that no matter how greedy he was still my son. He was still the boy I held when he had chicken pox. He was still the boy who cried when his goldfish died. But that boy was gone. In his place was a desperate stranger who was looking at me not as a father, but as an obstacle. I was a vault that wouldn't open, and desperate men blow up vaults. "I promise you," Marcus said, his voice trembling. "The old man is a vegetable. I am pulling the plug, figuratively speaking. We are moving his wife to a home on Monday. Once she is out of the way, I have full control. You will have your money, Sal. With interest. Just don't hurt me." He hung up the phone. The silence that followed was heavy and suffocating. Marcus didn't leave the room right away. He walked to the side of my bed. I felt his presence looming over me. I felt his hand rest on the railing of the bed. "Why don't you just let go, Dad?" he whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a plea. "You had a good run," he continued, his voice thick with self-pity. "You built the towers. You made the money. You proved your point. Why do you have to hang on like this? You are just making it harder for everyone. You are making it harder for me." He leaned in closer. I could feel his breath on my cheek. "If you were a good father, you would just die," he said softly. "That is what a good father does, right? He sacrifices for his children, so sacrifice this one last time. Die so I can live." He patted my hand. It was a cold, dismissive pat. Then he turned and walked toward the window. I heard him open a can of soda. The snap and fizz sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could see it thumping against my chest wall. He wanted me dead. He needed me dead. The clock wasn't ticking down to my recovery anymore. It was ticking down to my execution. I realized then that I couldn't just wait to get strong. I couldn't just lie here and practice moving my fingers. I needed allies. I needed help. I needed someone on the outside who could see what was happening. Loretta was trapped by them. She was probably at home right now, crying, thinking I was lost to her. Kendra was useless, swayed by her husband and her brother. I was alone in a room with a wolf who was waiting for me to stop breathing. But then, I remembered the nurse. The older one. Hattie. The one with the gentle hands. The one who hummed gospel songs when she checked my vitals. She had been in the room earlier. She had spoken to me like I was a person, not a piece of furniture. She had told me to keep fighting. Maybe she saw. Maybe she knew. Nurses see everything. They see the families who cry real tears and the families who check their watches. They see the sons who hold their father's hand and the sons who stand by the window making deals with loan sharks. I had to reach her. I had to make her understand. The door opened again. "Mr. Washington," a stern voice said. It was Dr. Evans. I recognized his clipped, arrogant tone. Marcus turned from the window. "Oh, doctor. I didn't hear you come in. I have the latest scan results," the doctor said. "And I wanted to discuss the transfer to the long-term care facility. We need to clear this bed, Mr. Washington. We have a waiting list." "Of course," Marcus said, his voice instantly smoothing out, becoming the grieving son again. "We want what is best for Dad, but we are having some liquidity issues with the insurance. We might need to move him somewhere. More affordable. And my mother, she is not coping well. We think it is best if she is also in a care environment. It is a difficult time," the doctor said mechanically. "But we need a decision by tomorrow morning, Saturday, or we will have to initiate a discharge to the state facility. Tomorrow morning." The deadline had just moved up. I didn't have a week. I didn't have days. I had hours. I heard them leave the room together, discussing my fate like they were discussing the disposal of an old sofa. The door closed. I was alone again. Panic began to rise in my throat, hot and sour. I needed to move. I needed to speak, but I couldn't risk it. Not yet. Not while Marcus was prowling the halls. Then, the door opened one more time. It opened slowly, quietly. There were no heavy footsteps, just the soft squeak of rubber soles. "Mr. Washington?" a soft voice whispered. It was her, Hattie. She came to the side of the bed. I felt her warm hand check the pulse at my wrist. "I know you are in there," she whispered. "I saw the monitor jump when your son was talking." My heart leaped. She knew. She leaned down, her face close to mine. I could smell peppermint and soap. "Your boy is a troubled soul," she murmured. "I heard him on the phone. I heard him talking about the money. And I heard him talking about your wife." She paused, and her hand squeezed my wrist gently. A signal. "If you can hear me, Isaiah, if you are really in there, you need to give me a sign. A real sign. Because if you don't, they are going to ship you out of here tomorrow, and I don't think you are coming back from where they are sending you." This was it. The lifeline. I gathered every ounce of strength I had. I focused on my hand. I focused on the anger, the fear, the love for Loretta. I poured it all into my fingers. I didn't just twitch this time. I squeezed her hand with everything I had. Hattie gasped. "Okay," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "Okay, Mr. Washington. I got you. We have a lot of work to do." She didn't scream. She didn't run to the hallway to call the doctor. She didn't throw open the door to announce a miracle. Hattie was a veteran of the night shift, and she knew that sometimes a miracle needs to be kept quiet to survive. She looked at the door to make sure it was fully closed, and then she looked back at me with eyes that had seen everything from birth to death and everything in between. She pulled the chair closer to the bed, the metal legs scraping softly against the floor, and she sat down. "You are a sly one, Mr. Washington," she whispered, and a small smile played on her lips. "You had everyone fooled, even Dr. Evans. But you didn't fool me. I know the difference between a man who has left the building and a man who is just hiding in the basement." She reached for a small cup of water and a pink sponge on a stick. "You are thirsty," she said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact. She dipped the sponge in the water and brought it to my lips. The moment that cool water touched my cracked skin, it felt like rain falling on a desert. I wanted to bite the sponge. I wanted to drink the whole cup. But I had no control over my throat yet. Hattie was patient. She dabbed my lips, letting just a few drops trickle into my mouth. It was the sweetest thing I had ever tasted. It tasted like life. "Take your time," she soothed. "We have all night. Your son is gone. He went to get dinner at a steakhouse downtown. I heard him making the reservation. He ordered a bottle of wine that costs more than I make in a week. The mention of the wine made my stomach turn. He was celebrating. He was toasting to my end. But your wife is still here," Hattie said, and her voice changed. It became softer, sadder. "She is down in the waiting room on the first floor. She has been there since 6 this morning." My heart hammered against my ribs. "Loretta. She was here. She was in the building. Why isn't she here?" I tried to ask, but no sound came out. My mouth just opened and closed like a fish on a dock. Hattie understood. She dabbed my lips again. "Your children won't let her up," she said quietly. "They told the security guard that she is confused. They said she has dementia and that seeing you like this upsets her too much. They put a restricted visitor order on her file." Dementia. The word exploded in my brain. Loretta didn't have dementia. She was the sharpest woman I knew. She did the Sunday crossword in pen. She remembered everybody's birthday. They were gaslighting her. They were painting her as incompetent so they could discard her, just like they were discarding me. I felt a fresh wave of rage, but this time it wasn't cold. It was hot. It burned through the fog in my mind. They were keeping my wife away from me. They were leaving her alone on a hard plastic chair in a cold waiting room while they ate steak and drank expensive wine. I have to see her. I pushed the words up from my diaphragm. I fought against the paralysis in my throat. It felt like swallowing broken glass. My tongue felt too big for my mouth. "We, FFF." The sound was barely a whisper. It was a croak, a rustle of dry leaves, but Hattie heard it. "I know," she said. "I know you want to see her, and she wants to see you. Every time I go down there to get coffee, she asks me, 'Nurse, how is he? Nurse, is he in pain? Nurse, please tell him I love him.' She is wearing a blue coat. She has a Bible in her lap, and she is crying, Mr. Washington. She is crying quiet tears so she doesn't disturb the other people. The image of Loretta sitting there in her blue Sunday coat, clutching her Bible, weeping alone, broke me. It shattered whatever pride I had left. I didn't care about the money anymore. I didn't care about the company. I just wanted to hold her hand. I wanted to tell her I was sorry. I wanted to tell her we were going to fix this. "Get her," I rasped. "Please." It took every ounce of energy I had to get that one word out. Please. I hadn't said please to anyone in years. I was Isaiah Washington. I gave orders. I didn't beg. But I was begging now. I was begging this woman I barely knew to save my life. Hattie looked at me. She looked at the door. She looked at her watch. "It is risky," she said. "If Dr. Evans finds out, I lose my job. If your son finds out, he will sue the hospital and I will lose my license. I have a pension, Mr. Washington. I have grandchildren of my own to feed." I looked at her. I tried to put everything I felt into my eyes. I tried to tell her that I would protect her, that I would give her anything she wanted, that I would build her a house with my own hands if she did this one thing for me. She looked into my eyes and she must have seen the desperation. She must have seen the man I used to be. Or maybe she just saw a husband who needed his wife. She sighed. A long, heavy sigh that carried the weight of 30 years of nursing. "The night shift supervisor owes me a favor," she said, mostly to herself. "And the security guard at the front desk is my nephew." She stood up. She smoothed her uniform. She looked like a soldier preparing for battle. "Your son said he would be back at 10, she said. "It is 8:30 now. That gives us an hour, maybe an hour and a half if the service at the steakhouse is slow." She leaned over me again. "You have to be quiet," she warned. "If I bring her up here, you cannot make a sound. If anyone hears you talking, the game is over. They will sedate you. They will say you are agitated. Do you understand?" I blinked once. "Yes, and you have to be prepared," she added gently. "She thinks you are dying. Seeing you awake might shock her. We don't want her to have a heart attack." I blinked again. "Okay," Hattie said. She walked to the door and opened it a crack. She peeked out into the hallway. "I am going to get her," she whispered. "You just rest. Save your strength. You are going to need it." She slipped out of the room and the door clicked shut. I was alone again, but the darkness didn't feel so heavy anymore. Hope is a powerful drug. It is stronger than morphine. It is stronger than fear. I lay there and I started to rehearse what I would say. I couldn't speak much. My throat was raw and my tongue was heavy. I had to choose my words carefully. I couldn't waste breath on anger. I couldn't waste breath on the past. I had to give her a mission. Loretta wasn't just my wife. She was my partner. People saw her as the quiet woman standing behind the successful man, but they didn't know the truth. They didn't know that she did the books for the first 10 years. They didn't know she was the one who told me to buy the land on the north side before the boom. She had a steel-trap mind. She just hid it behind a soft smile because that was what the world expected of her. But I needed the steel now. I needed the woman who helped me fight off the union enforcers in the 80s. I needed the woman who marched into the bank manager's office when they denied our first loan and refused to leave until they heard her out. She was the only person in the world I could trust, and she was coming. I closed my eyes and visualized her walking down the hall. I visualized her entering the room. I visualized the look on her face when she saw my eyes open. Beep, beep, beep. The monitor was steady. My heart was ready. 10 minutes passed. It felt like 10 years. I heard every footstep in the corridor, praying it was them. I heard the rattle of a cart. I heard a laugh from the nurse's station. And then, finally, I heard it. The soft, hesitant click of a woman's heels. Not the sharp, confident click of a nurse's shoe, but the careful, weary step of a woman who is afraid of what she is about to find. The door handle turned slowly. The door opened just wide enough for a shadow to slip through. Hattie came in first, checking the corners of the room like she was securing a perimeter. Then she reached back and pulled someone in by the hand. It was Loretta. Seeing her broke my heart and healed it all at the same time. She looked smaller than I remembered. She was wearing her Sunday blue coat, the one with the velvet collar, but it hung loose on her shoulders now. Her hair, usually done up in a perfect bun, was fraying at the edges. She was clutching her black leather Bible to her chest like a shield. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she was staring at the floor, afraid to look at the bed. She was afraid to see the shell of the man she married. "He is resting," Hattie whispered to her. "But he is waiting for you." Loretta looked up then. She looked at the bed. I didn't wait. I didn't pretend. I opened my eyes wide and I looked right at her. For a second, she stopped breathing. She froze in the middle of the room, one hand flying up to cover her mouth. She dropped the Bible. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, but nobody noticed. "Isaiah," she choked out. It was a sound so full of hope and terror that it made my chest ache. I tried to smile. It was crooked, I knew, because the left side of my face was still lazy, but it was me. Etta, I rasped. She didn't walk. She ran. She rushed to the side of the bed and fell to her knees. She buried her face in my hand, the one that Hattie had placed on the blanket. I could feel her hot tears soaking into my skin instantly. She was shaking, sobbing quiet, ragged sobs that shook the whole bed frame. "Oh God," she wept. "Oh God, Isaiah. They told me you were gone. They told me you couldn't hear me." I moved my fingers. I tangled them in her hair, just like I used to do on Sunday mornings when we would lie in bed and listen to the rain. "I am here," I whispered. She lifted her head. Her face was wet, her mascara running, but her eyes were searching mine, looking for the husband she knew. "You are awake," she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Why didn't they tell me? Why did Marcus say you were a vegetable?" The name hung in the air. Marcus. I needed her to listen now. I needed her to stop being the grieving wife and start being the partner I built an empire with. I squeezed her hand. Hard. "Listen," I said. The word was a struggle, pushing through gravel in my throat. She leaned in close, her ear almost touching my lips. "They are lying," I said. "What do you mean?" she asked, pulling back slightly to look at me. "Marcus," I said. "Kendra, they want the money." Loretta shook her head, a reflex of a mother defending her cubs. "No, Isaiah, they are worried. Marcus is stressed. He has been handling everything. He told me the business is in trouble. He stole it." I forced the words out. "He owes debt." I saw the confusion in her eyes turn to horror. She didn't want to believe it. No mother wants to believe her son is a thief, but Loretta was smart. Deep down, she knew. She had seen the new cars. She had seen the gambling trips. She had felt the distance. "Shady Grove," I whispered. She froze. "What?" "They put you in Shady Grove Monday." The color drained from her face completely. She looked like a ghost. She knew Shady Grove. We drove past it every Sunday on our way to church. She knew what kind of place it was. "No," she whispered. "Marcus said he found a private facility, a nice place, with gardens." "Lies," I hissed. "Cheap place to save money." She looked at Hattie. She wanted the nurse to tell her I was confused. She wanted Hattie to say it was the medication talking. But Hattie just stood by the door, arms crossed, her face grim. "He is telling the truth, Mrs. Washington," Hattie said softly. "I heard them. Your son was on the phone with a loan shark. He needs $4 million by Tuesday, and he is going to sell your house and put you in the state home to get it." Loretta let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream and wasn't quite a sob. It was the sound of a woman's heart breaking into two distinct pieces. She slumped against the bed rail. "My baby," she cried softly. "My baby boy. How could he?" "He is lost," I said. I needed her to focus. We didn't have time for grief. We only had time for survival. "Loretta," I said. She looked up at me. The tears were still falling, but there was something else in her eyes now. A spark. The same spark I saw when we started our first company. The same spark I saw when she told off the bank manager. "Stop crying," I ordered her. She sniffled and wiped her face. She straightened her back a little. "We fight," I said. "How?" she asked, helpless. "They have the lawyers. They have the doctors. Marcus has my power of attorney papers ready. He said I have to sign them tomorrow or we lose the house." "Do not sign," I said. "I won't," she promised. "But what do we do? They control the accounts. My cards were declined at the grocery store yesterday, Isaiah. I had to put the milk back." The shame on her face enraged me. My wife, putting back milk. "The black iron," I whispered. Her eyes went wide. The black iron. It was our secret. A heavy, fireproof safe hidden behind the false wall in the basement pantry, behind the chest freezer. We hadn't used it in 10 years. It was our doomsday fund. Our if the world ends money. It was from the old days, when contractors paid in cash and banks asked too many questions. "Is it still there?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Key is in my old boot." She nodded. She knew exactly which boot. My lucky work boots from 1985, bronzed and sitting on the shelf in the garage. "Go," I said. "Tonight. Take everything," I commanded. "It is a lot of cash, Isaiah," she whispered. "Take it," I repeated. "Hide it. Where? Not house," I said. "House is not safe." She thought for a moment. I could see the gears turning. She was back. My Loretta was back. "My sister's place," she said. "Auntie May. In the attic. Marcus never goes there. He thinks May is crazy." "Good," I said. "Bring clothes," I added. "For me." She looked at me, confused. "Clothes?" "I am leaving," I said. "Leaving? You can't walk, Isaiah." I will walk, I promised her. By Friday. Hattie stepped forward from the door. Her voice was low and urgent. We are out of time, she said. I see the elevator lights moving. Someone is coming up to this floor. Loretta grabbed my hand again. She kissed my knuckles. She kissed my palm. I will do it, she whispered fiercely. I will get the money. I will hide it, and I will come back. Do not let them see you cry, I told her. She stood up. She smoothed her blue coat. She picked up her Bible from the floor. She took a deep breath, and I watched the transformation happen. She grew 2 inches taller, her jaw set. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was Mrs. Isaiah Washington, and she was going to war. I love you, old man, she said, a sad smile touching her lips. I love you, I managed to say. Hattie opened the door and peeked out. Coast is clear, she signaled. Go to the stairs, honey. Don't use the elevator. Loretta looked at me one last time, searing my image into her mind, and then she turned and walked out the door. She didn't look back. The door clicked shut. Hattie let out a long breath and leaned against the frame. That is one hell of a woman you got there, Mr. Washington, she said. The best, I thought. The very best. And now, the real work began. I had 3 days to learn how to walk again. I had 3 days to fool the doctors, fool my son, and plan the greatest escape this hospital had ever seen. I closed my eyes, but this time, I wasn't hiding. I was preparing. The darkness of the hospital room was my gym and my church, and my prison cell all rolled into one. While Loretta was out in the world fighting our war on the financial front, I was fighting a war against my own body. Hattie was my drill sergeant. She didn't treat me like a dying billionaire. She treated me like a rookie bricklayer who was slacking on the job. It started at 2 in the morning when the hallway was quiet and the night nurses were dozing at their stations. Hattie would slip into the room and lock the door. She would turn off the monitors so the alarms wouldn't trigger when my heart rate spiked. Then she would pull back the sheets. Time to work, Mr. Washington, she would whisper. You want to walk out of here on Friday, you have to pay the price today. The price was pain, pure white-hot agony. My muscles had been asleep for weeks. They had atrophied. They were tight and weak like old rubber bands that were ready to snap. When I tried to lift my right leg, just an inch off the mattress, it felt like someone was driving a rusty nail into my hip joint. I gritted my teeth until I thought they would crack. Sweat poured down my face and stung my eyes. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell her to stop. But then I would hear Marcus's voice in my head. I would hear him bargaining with the loan shark. I would hear him selling my wife's home. And that anger was the fuel that powered my engine. Up, Hattie whispered. Come on, Isaiah. Push. Push like you are pushing a wheelbarrow full of wet cement. I pushed. My leg shook violently. It spasmed, but it rose. 2 inches. 3 inches. Hold it, she commanded. Hold it right there. Don't you dare drop it. I held it for 10 seconds that felt like 10 hours. Then I let it drop back onto the bed with a thud that sounded too loud in the silent room. I lay there panting, gasping for air, my chest heaving. Good, Hattie said, wiping my forehead with a cold towel. Now the other one. We did this for 2 hours every night. Leg lifts, arm circles, grip strength exercises, squeezing a rubber ball she brought from home. By the time the sun started to bleed gray light through the blinds, I was exhausted. I was trembling from head to toe, but I felt something I hadn't felt since the stroke. I felt power. It was small, it was fragile, but it was there. While I was sweating in that bed, Loretta was executing the second part of the plan. I couldn't be there with her, but I could see it in my mind, just as clearly as if I was standing next to her. She waited until 9 in the morning. She dressed in black. Not morning black, but serious business black. She put on her dark sunglasses to hide her red eyes. She drove the old Buick we kept for the housekeeper because she knew Marcus wouldn't be tracking it. She drove straight to the First National Bank on Dearborn Street. This was the bank where I had done business for 40 years. The manager, Mr. Henderson, was a man I had known since we were both playing stickball in the street. He was a good man, a loyal man. But loyalty in the banking world has limits. Loretta walked into that bank and she played the role of her life. She didn't walk tall like the warrior she was the night before. She walked with a stoop. She let her hands shake when she reached for the counter. She played the confused, grieving wife perfectly because she knew that was what they expected to see. Mr. Henderson came out of his office immediately when he saw her. "Mrs. Washington," he said, taking her hands. "I was so sorry to hear about Isaiah. How is he?" "He is fading, Arthur," she said, and her voice cracked. It wasn't entirely acting. The fear was real. The exhaustion was real. But the purpose was steel. "I am so sorry," Henderson said. "Is there anything I can do? I need to get into the safety deposit boxes," she whispered, leaning in close so the tellers wouldn't hear. "Isaiah kept some personal papers in there. Letters. For the children. I want to have them ready. You know, for the end." It was a lie that touched the heart. Who would deny a dying man's final letters to his children? Henderson didn't ask for the probate papers. He didn't ask for the power of attorney that Marcus was trying so hard to get. He just nodded solemnly. "Of course, Loretta," he said. "Right this way." He led her into the vault. The heavy steel door swung open with a hiss of hydraulics. It was the sound of money. It was the sound of security. He left her alone in the small private room with our 3 large boxes. Loretta didn't waste a second. As soon as the door clicked shut, she opened the largest duffel bag she had hidden under her coat. She unlocked the boxes. Inside wasn't just papers. There were gold coins we had bought during the crash of '87. There were the diamond earrings I gave her for our 30th anniversary. There were bearer bonds that were as good as cash anywhere in the world. And there were the deeds. The original deeds to the land in Portugal that I had bought 20 years ago on a whim. A retirement dream I had never told anyone about. Not even Marcus. She emptied the boxes. She took everything. She left nothing but dust and empty velvet bags. She stuffed it all into her bag. Her heart must have been hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. If Marcus walked in right then, if Kendra showed up to check the accounts, it would be over. They would call the police. They would say she was stealing the estate. But nobody came. She closed the empty boxes and slid them back into their slots. She zipped up her bag. She took a deep breath and composed her face back into the mask of grief. She walked out of the vault. "Did you find what you needed?" Henderson asked gently. "Yes, Arthur," she said, patting her bag. "I have everything I need. Thank you for everything." She walked out of that bank with a fortune in her purse. She walked past the security guard who held the door for her. She walked to the car and drove away without looking back. Back in the hospital, Hattie came in for her shift at 7 that night. She looked tired, but her eyes were bright. "Your wife called the nurses' station," she whispered as she checked my IV. She used the code word. She said, "The laundry is done. The laundry is done." That meant the money was safe. That meant the gold and the deeds were hidden. We had the resources. Now we just needed the escape. My legs were screaming from the workout the night before. The muscles were knotted and sore. But when Hattie told me that news, the pain vanished. I felt a surge of adrenaline. "Help me up," I said. My voice was stronger now. Less gravel, more concrete. "We have work to do, Mr. Washington," Hattie warned. "You barely lifted your leg last night. Tonight I stand," I said. Hattie looked at me and grinned. "Well, all right then," she said, locking the door. "Let's see what you got, old man." She pulled me to the edge of the bed. I swung my legs over. They hung there heavy and useless, but I focused on them. I pictured the nerves reconnecting. I pictured the electricity flowing from my brain to my toes. I grabbed Hattie's shoulders. She braced herself. She was a strong woman built from years of lifting patients, but I was a big man. "On 3, she said. 1, 2, 3. I pushed. I pushed with my arms. I pushed with my core. And I pushed with those sleeping legs. Pain exploded in my hips. My knees buckled. I swayed like a tree in a hurricane. But I didn't fall. I stood. For 3 seconds I was Isaiah Washington again. I was 6'2". I was standing on my own 2 feet. Then my knees gave out and I collapsed back onto the mattress, gasping and sweating. But I had done it. I had stood. Hattie was beaming. "Friday," she whispered. "Friday you are walking out of here. Friday," I repeated. But before Friday came, we had one more hurdle. Marcus was coming back in the morning, and he was bringing a specialist, a hired gun to certify that my brain was mush. I had to be ready to give the performance of a lifetime. I had to play dead better than I had ever played anything in my life. While I was in that hospital bed learning how to be a man again, my son was in a glass tower downtown trying to tear down everything I had built. It was Friday morning. The sun was shining on Lake Michigan, but inside the offices of Franklin and Associates the mood was stormy. I know this because Franklin told me later. He told me every detail over a bottle of vintage port in Portugal. He told me how my son walked into his office not like a client but like a desperate junkie looking for a fix. Marcus didn't have an appointment. He just pushed past the secretary. He burst into Franklin's corner office, the one with the mahogany desk that I had given him as a gift when he won his first big case. Franklin was reviewing contracts. He looked up over his reading glasses. He was a man of few words, a man of stone. He had been my lawyer for 30 years and he knew where every body was buried because he had helped me dig the holes. "I need the signature," Marcus demanded. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask how the fishing trip was. He just slapped a folder onto the desk. It slid across the polished wood and stopped right in front of Franklin's hands. Franklin didn't open it. He didn't even blink. He just folded his hands on top of his papers and looked at my son. "Good morning, Marcus," he said calmly. "To what do I owe the pleasure of this intrusion?" "Cut the polite act, Franklin," Marcus snapped. His voice was high and tight. "I need full access to the corporate accounts. Today, Dad is gone. The doctors say his brain is mush. We have to liquidate assets to cover the medical bills and secure the estate." Franklin looked at the folder. He opened it slowly. He read the document Marcus had prepared. It was a power of attorney drafted by some cheap strip mall lawyer. It was sloppy. It was broad. It gave Marcus the right to sell everything from the cranes to the paperclips. "I cannot sign this," Franklin said, closing the folder. "What do you mean you can't sign it?" Marcus shouted. He slammed his hand on the desk. "I am his son. I am the heir." "You are the heir when he is dead," Franklin corrected him. "He is not dead. He is a vegetable," Marcus yelled. "He is never waking up. I have a doctor coming tomorrow to certify it, but I can't wait until tomorrow. I need the liquidity now. There are payrolls to meet. There are vendors to pay." Franklin leaned back in his leather chair. He knew my business better than anyone. He knew I kept 6 months of operating cash in the reserve account specifically, so we would never be desperate. He knew that if Marcus was screaming about payroll, it was a lie. "The reserve accounts have plenty of funds for payroll," Franklin said, his voice like ice. "If you are having cash flow problems, Marcus, it is not because of the company. It is because of you." Marcus turned red. It was a deep, ugly flush that started at his neck and went all the way to his hairline. He looked like he was going to hit the old man. "You work for me," Marcus hissed. "You work for the family. And if you don't sign that paper authorizing the transfer, I will fire you. I will ruin you. I will tell everyone that you are senile and incompetent." Franklin stood up then. He wasn't a tall man, but he had presence. He had the kind of authority that you can't buy. "I work for Isaiah Washington," he said, "and until Isaiah Washington looks me in the eye and tells me to hand you the keys to the kingdom, or until I see a death certificate with his name on it, you get nothing. Not a dime. Not a single share of stock." Marcus was trembling. He was cornered. He ran a hand through his hair, messing up his perfect gel job. "You don't understand," he pleaded, and the anger was replaced by that same terrifying fear I had heard in the hospital room. "I need it. They will kill me, Franklin. They will kill me." Franklin paused. He saw it then. He saw the truth I had seen in the hospital room. He realized this wasn't about greed. It was about survival. "Who will kill you?" Marcus, Franklin asked softly. Marcus realized he had said too much. He stepped back. His eyes darted around the room like he was looking for an exit or a weapon. "Just sign the paper," he whispered. "Please." "No," Franklin said. Marcus stared at him for a long moment. Then he grabbed the folder off the desk. "Fine," he spat. "You want to play hardball? We will play hardball. When I get that medical certification tomorrow, you are finished. You are done in this town." He stormed out of the office. He slammed the door so hard the framed degrees on the wall shook. Franklin sat back down. He didn't go back to his contracts. He picked up his phone. He didn't call the police because that would make it public. He didn't call Marcus back. He called a courier service. He wrote a letter. He didn't type it because digital trails can be followed. He wrote it by hand on his personal stationery. He sealed it in an envelope with wax, just like he used to do in the old days. 2 hours later, that courier arrived at the hospital. He didn't go to the front desk. He went to the loading dock where Hattie took her smoke breaks. Franklin knew everything. He knew Hattie. He knew she was the only one on the inside who was truly loyal. Hattie brought the letter to my room tucked inside a folded newspaper. "It is from the lawyer," she whispered, unlocking the door. My hands were shaking from the exertion of the morning, but I managed to open it. Loretta was sitting in the corner in the shadows, keeping watch. I read the letter aloud in a whisper. Isaiah, the wolves are at the door. Your son was here. He is desperate and dangerous. He tried to force a transfer of assets. I refused, but I can only hold the line for so long. He claims he will have a medical certification of your incompetence by tomorrow morning. If he gets that, my hands are tied legally. I have placed a temporary freeze on the main accounts citing suspicious activity, but that will only hold for 72 hours. After that, he can challenge it in court. If you have a plan, execute it now. I am with you until the end. Franklin. 72 hours. The shield was up, but it was cracking. Franklin had bought us time, but he had also backed Marcus into a corner. A desperate man with no money and a ticking clock is a bomb waiting to explode. Marcus was going to come at me with everything he had. He wasn't just going to bring a doctor tomorrow. He was going to bring a rubber stamp. He was going to make sure I was declared incompetent, even if he had to bribe the Pope himself. Loretta looked at me. Her face was pale in the dim light. What do we do, Isaiah? She asked. If they declare you incompetent, they can take the house. They can freeze the accounts before we can move the rest of the money. We stick to the plan, I said. My voice was steady even though my heart was racing. We have the cash from the safe. We have the gold. Franklin is holding the line. But what about tomorrow? She asked. The specialist, if he examines you, if he tests your reflexes, he will know you are awake. I looked at my hands, the hands that had just started to obey me again. Then I have to be dead, I said. What? Loretta asked. I have to be dead to the world, I explained. When that doctor comes in here tomorrow, I cannot flinch. I cannot move. I cannot react. I have to be the vegetable they say I am. It is too risky, Hattie said. They do deep pain tests, Isaiah. They pinch the nail beds. They rub the sternum. It hurts like hell. If you flinch even a tiny bit, the game is up. I looked at Hattie. I looked at Loretta. I thought about the winter of '82. I thought about the frozen bricks. I thought about the pain of frostbite. I had endured that for them. I could endure this. Let them pinch, I said. Let them rub. I am made of stone. But inside I was terrified. Because I wasn't made of stone. I was a man who had just learned to feel again. And tomorrow I had to turn it all off. Tomorrow I had to let them hurt me and thank them for it with my silence. The lawyer's shield was holding the money safe, but my body was the only shield left for my freedom. The real test didn't come from the expensive specialist Marcus hired. It came from a kid, a resident doctor who looked like he was barely old enough to shave. He came in at 3 in the morning on his rounds. He was tired and he was thorough. He wasn't one of Dr. Evans' cronies. He was just a young man trying to do his job right. Hattie was on her break. I was alone. I heard the door open and I immediately went limp. I let my jaw slacken. I let my eyes roll back slightly under the lids. I slowed my breathing until it was shallow and rhythmic. The resident walked to the side of the bed. I felt him check my chart. I felt the cold metal of his stethoscope on my chest. Mr. Washington, he said loudly. Can you hear me? I didn't move. He shined a penlight into my eyes. I forced myself not to blink. It burned. It felt like he was sticking a needle into my retina, but I stared straight ahead into the nothingness. Pupils are sluggish, he muttered to himself. Then he did it. He took a pen from his pocket. He didn't use the soft end. He used the hard plastic cap. He placed it against the cuticle of my thumb, the nail bed. It is a sensitive spot. A very sensitive spot. He pressed down. At first, it was just pressure. Then it was pain. Sharp, blinding pain that shot up my arm like a bolt of lightning. He was digging the plastic into the nerve. He was looking for a reaction. He was looking for a flinch, a withdrawal. Anything that showed the brain was still connected to the body. My natural instinct screamed at me to yank my hand away. It screamed at me to punch him. The pain turned white hot. It felt like my thumb was being crushed in a vice. I thought about the brick wall. I thought about the concrete. I am stone, I told myself. Stone does not feel. Stone does not flinch. I focused on a crack in the ceiling tile. I focused on it with everything I had. I poured my consciousness into that crack. I wasn't in the bed. I wasn't in my body. I was up there in the ceiling. The resident pressed harder. He leaned his weight into it. My heart rate monitor sped up. Beep, 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 beep. He stopped. He looked at the monitor. He looked at my face. I could feel his suspicion. He knew something wasn't right. A vegetable doesn't have a heart rate spike like that without a physical reflex. He reached for my sternum. He was going to do the rub. The sternum rub is agony. It is bone on bone. Just then, the door swung open. "What are you doing?" Hattie's voice cracked like a whip. The resident jumped. He pulled his hand back. "I was just checking his responsiveness," he stammered. His heart rate spiked. "He is having a bad dream," Hattie said, marching over to the bed. "Or maybe he is reacting to you poking him like a pincushion. Look at his vitals now." She pointed to the monitor. I had forced myself to calm down as soon as I heard her voice. The beeping was slowing. Beep, beep, beep. "He is stable," Hattie said firmly. "Let the man rest. He has a big day tomorrow with the transfer." The resident hesitated. He looked at me one last time. He looked confused. But he was an intern and she was the head nurse. He knew better than to fight that battle. "All right," he said. "Keep an eye on him." He left. Hattie locked the door and rushed to my side. She grabbed my hand. My thumb was red and angry. There was a deep indentation where the pen had been. "Damn," she whispered. "That looks like it hurts." "It does," I rasped. "You are a tough son of a gun, Isaiah," she said, shaking her head. "I don't know how you didn't scream." I didn't scream because I had something more painful to deal with an hour later. Kendra came. It was late morning. Marcus was off meeting with the specialist. Kendra came alone. She didn't have her husband Dante with her. She looked tired. She looked older than her 30 years. She sat in the chair by the window, the same chair her brother had sat in. But she didn't check her phone. She just watched me. "Daddy," she whispered. It was the voice of the little girl who used to wait for me by the door when I came home from work. The little girl who would run into my arms smelling of vanilla and crayons. "I miss you, Daddy," she said. And then she started to cry. It wasn't the fake crying of a performance. It was real. She put her head on the mattress near my hand. "I don't know what to do," she sobbed. "Marcus says we have to sell. Dante says we have to sell. They say the company is sinking. They say you made bad deals before you got sick." "Bad deals." That was a lie, Dante told her. "I never made a bad deal in my life." "I want to believe them," she continued. "But it feels wrong. Selling the firm, putting Mom in that place. It feels wrong." Hope flickered in my chest. She knew. Her conscience was still there, buried under layers of weakness and manipulation. If I could just wake up. If I could just grab her hand and tell her the truth, maybe she would flip. Maybe she would stand with me. I almost did it. I almost opened my eyes. I almost risked it all to save my baby girl. But then her phone rang. She sat up. She wiped her face quickly like she was afraid to be caught crying. She looked at the screen. "Hi, Dante," she said. Her voice changed instantly. It became small, submissive. "No," she said, listening. "No, I am at the hospital. I am just saying goodbye." She paused, listening to him talk. I could hear the murmur of his voice on the other end. It was sharp, fast, aggressive. "I know," she said. "I know we need the money for the investment. I know it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Investment." Dante was gambling with her inheritance before he even had it. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I signed the papers with Marcus. Yes, I agreed to the sale." My heart sank. She had already signed. She had already agreed. "Okay," she said. "Okay, honey. I love you too. I will be home soon." She hung up. She looked at me one last time, but the softness was gone. The regret was gone. It was replaced by resignation. She had made her choice. She had chosen the husband who controlled her over the father who loved her. She had chosen the easy path of submission over the hard path of integrity. She stood up. She smoothed her skirt. "It is for the best, Daddy," she said to my sleeping face. "You would want us to be happy. You would want us to be secure." She kissed my forehead. Her lips were cold. "Goodbye, Daddy." She walked out. I lay there and the silence was different this time. It wasn't empty. It was final. I realized then that I couldn't save them. I couldn't save Kendra from her weakness any more than I could save Marcus from his greed. They were adults. They had made their beds and now they had to sleep in them. If I stayed, if I woke up and fought them in court, if I spent the rest of my life trying to fix their mistakes, I would lose everything. I would lose Loretta. I would lose my peace. I would lose myself. You cannot save someone who is drowning if they are trying to pull you down with them. You have to let go. You have to kick away and swim for the surface. I let go of Kendra. I let go of the little girl with the vanilla scent. I let go of the hope that she would be the one to defend me. The grief was heavy, but it was clean. It was the grief of an amputation. The limb is gone, but the infection is gone too. I took a deep breath. My thumb throbbed where the doctor had pressed it. My heart ached where my daughter had broken it. But my mind was clear. Friday was coming. The alarm would ring. The fire would start. And Isaiah Washington was going to vanish from the face of the earth. I closed my eyes and I didn't think about the past anymore. I thought about the future. I thought about the ocean. I thought about Loretta waiting in the car. I was ready to run. Friday arrived with a sky the color of a bruised plum. Rain lashed against the hospital window pane like handfuls of gravel thrown by an angry ghost. It was the kind of day that felt heavy. The kind of day where bad news travels fast and good luck is hard to find. I lay in bed listening to the storm outside and the storm inside. Marcus had arrived at 8 in the morning. He was wearing a new suit, a charcoal gray Italian cut that probably cost $3,000. He looked sharp. He looked ready. He looked like a man who was about to close the biggest deal of his life. He wasn't alone. He had brought Dr. Sterling with him. Sterling wasn't a healer. I could tell just by looking at him. He was a technician, a man who dealt in signatures and certifications. He had a gold watch and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stood at the foot of my bed and looked at my chart without even glancing at my face. "So this is the patient," Sterling said, his voice smooth like oil. "Yes," Marcus replied. "As I told you on the phone, he has been non-responsive for 3 weeks. The previous tests were inconclusive, but we need a definitive diagnosis today. The estate is in limbo, doctor. We need to move forward." Sterling nodded. He pulled a pen from his pocket. "A gold Mont Blanc. I understand, Mr. Washington. We will do the final assessment at 4 this afternoon. I have to wait for the hospital ethics board representative to be present as a witness. It is just a formality, really. Once I verify the lack of cortical activity, I can sign the certificate of incompetence." 4 o'clock. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 10 in the morning. I had 6 hours. 6 hours before I was legally erased. 6 hours before Marcus got the keys to the kingdom. I kept my breathing steady. I kept my face blank. But inside my chest, my heart was hammering a war drum. "We will be back at 4 then," Marcus said. He looked at me one last time. There was no sadness in his eyes, only calculation. He was already spending the money. "Don't go anywhere, Dad," he whispered. He laughed at his own joke, a short, dry chuckle. Then they left. The room fell silent, but the silence was electric. I knew Hattie was out there. I knew Loretta was out there. The pieces were moving on the board. The hours dragged by. 11, 12, 1. At 1:30, Hattie came in with a lunch tray. She locked the door behind her. She didn't have food on the tray. She had a pile of folded gray fabric. "Here," she whispered, her eyes darting to the window to make sure the blinds were closed. It was a janitor's uniform. A jumpsuit. It smelled of industrial detergent and starch. "Put this under your pillow," she said. "At 3 o'clock exactly, I am going to the break room down the hall. I am going to light a fire in the trash can. I put a lot of oily rags in there. It is going to make a lot of smoke." "Smoke means sprinklers?" I asked, my voice rusty. "No," Hattie said. "No sprinklers. I disabled the sensor in that room, but the smoke will set off the main alarm. The fire doors will close. The staff will panic. They will evacuate the patients in the east wing. Everyone will be running that way. And I go the other way," I said. "Exactly," she said. "You take the service stairs. They are right next to the linen closet. Go down to the basement. Not the lobby. The basement." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a badge. It was an ID card on a lanyard. It had a picture of an old man who looked vaguely like me if you squinted. "Who is this?" I asked. "That is Mr. Johnson," she said. "He retired last week. He won't be needing it. Clip it on. If anyone stops you, just point to the badge and keep walking. Don't speak. Just walk." She squeezed my hand. Her palm was rough and warm. "You can do this, Isaiah," she said. "I have seen you fight for 3 weeks. You are ready." "I am ready," I said. She unlocked the door and left. 2 o'clock, 2:30. The waiting was the hardest part. My muscles were twitching. My brain was screaming at me to move, to run. But I had to wait for the signal. At 2:55 I sat up. The room spun for a second, but I steadied myself. I reached under the pillow. I pulled out the jumpsuit. I stripped off the hospital gown. I felt naked and vulnerable. My body was thinner than it used to be. My ribs showed. My scars from old construction accidents were pale against my skin. I was an old man, a tired old man. I pulled on the jumpsuit. It was tight in the shoulders and loose in the waist, but it fit. I zipped it up. I clipped the badge to the chest pocket. I looked in the mirror over the sink. I didn't see Isaiah Washington, the CEO. I didn't see the man who owned half of Chicago. I saw a ghost in gray. A nobody. A man who emptied trash cans and mopped floors. It was perfect. 3 o'clock. I stood by the door. My hand hovered over the handle. And then it happened. Wee you, wee you, wee you, wee you. The alarm was deafening. It wasn't just a bell. It was a siren that vibrated in your teeth. I heard shouting in the hallway. Fire. We have a fire in the break room. Code red. Code red. I heard running footsteps. Dozens of them. The heavy thud of orderlies. The sharp click of nurses. They were all running toward the east wing, just like Hattie said. I counted to 10. 1, 2, 3. I needed the chaos to peak. I needed the smoke to fill the air. 7, 8, 9, 10. I opened the door. The hallway was a river of white coats moving away from me. No one looked back. Smoke was starting to drift from the far end of the corridor. It was thick and gray. The smell of burning oil was acrid. I stepped out. I didn't run. Running attracts attention. Janitors don't run. Janitors walk with a purpose, but they don't run. I hunched my shoulders. I kept my head down. I dragged my left leg slightly just to change my gait. I walked against the flow of the panic. A nurse ran past me holding a clipboard. She didn't even see me. I was part of the scenery. I was just the help. I reached the linen closet. The door to the service stairs was right there. It was heavy and gray. I pushed the bar. The door opened with a heavy clank. I slipped inside. The stairwell was cool and quiet. The alarm was muffled here. It sounded distant like a siren in a dream. I leaned against the concrete wall for a second, breathing hard. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so fast I thought it would burst. I had done it. I was out of the room. But I wasn't out of the building. I looked down. 4 flights of stairs stood between me and the basement. 4 flights of concrete and steel. I thought about Loretta waiting in the car. I thought about the house in Portugal. I thought about the look on Marcus's face when he would walk into an empty room at 4 o'clock. I pushed off the wall. I grabbed the handrail. 1 step, 2 steps. I started to descend. Into the earth. Into the dark. Into my new life. The first flight of stairs was agony, but the second flight was hell. My legs were not legs anymore. They were pillars of fire. Every time my foot hit the concrete step, a shockwave of pain shot up to my hip. My knees felt like they were filled with broken glass. I gripped the cold metal handrail so hard my knuckles turned white. I counted the steps. 1, 2, 3. I had to keep a rhythm. If I stopped, I knew I would never start again. My muscles were screaming at me to sit down, to rest, to curl up on the landing and close my eyes. But I knew that if I sat down, the next person to find me would be Marcus, and he wouldn't help me up. He would bury me. I reached the 3rd landing. I stopped to breathe. My lungs were burning. The air in the stairwell was stale and cold. The alarm was still blaring above me, a muffled, constant wail that sounded like the world was ending. Then I heard it, the heavy thud of boots hitting concrete. Above me, coming down. Someone was running down the stairs. Panic seized my chest. I froze. I pressed myself against the wall in the shadows. I pulled the cap lower over my eyes. I hunched my shoulders. The footsteps got louder. Fast, heavy, clomp, clomp, clomp. It was a security guard, a big man with a radio on his belt. He came flying around the corner of the landing above. He was taking the steps 2 at a time. He saw me. "Move it, Pop," he yelled without slowing down. "Clear the stairs. We have a code red." He didn't stop. He didn't ask for my ID. He didn't look at my face. To him, I was just an obstacle. I was just an old janitor moving too slow. I nodded and shuffled to the side. "Sorry," I mumbled. My voice was low and rough. He brushed past me. The wind of his movement hit my face. He smelled of coffee and sweat. He kept running down into the dark. I waited until his footsteps faded. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to crack a rib. I was invisible. Hattie was right. In a uniform, nobody sees you. You become part of the building. You are just a fixture like a light switch or a door handle. I pushed off the wall. I continued my descent. 4th floor, 3rd floor, 2nd floor. By the time I reached the bottom, my shirt was soaked through with sweat. My legs were trembling uncontrollably. I looked at the door marked basement parking. It was a heavy steel fire door with a push bar. I took a deep breath. This was it, the last barrier. I put my shoulder against the bar and pushed. The door groaned. It was heavy, much heavier than I expected. I gritted my teeth. I dug my feet into the concrete floor. I pushed with everything I had left. The door swung open. The air that hit me was different. It was cool and damp. It smelled of gasoline and exhaust fumes and old tires. It was the smell of freedom. I stepped out into the parking garage. It was a cavernous space lit by buzzing fluorescent tubes that cast long, flickering shadows. Rows of cars sat in silence. It was quiet down here. The alarm was just a faint hum in the distance. I scanned the rows. Hattie had said Loretta would be waiting in a gray rental car near the exit ramp. I started walking. I tried to walk normally, but my limp was real now. My left leg was dragging. I felt exposed. Out here in the open, there were no walls to hide against. There were cameras. I could see the black domes on the ceiling watching me. I pulled the brim of my cap down until I could barely see where I was going. I walked past a red BMW. I walked past a white delivery van. Then I saw it, a dark gray Ford sedan. It was parked in the back row facing the exit. The engine was running. I could see the white puff of exhaust from the tailpipe. I walked faster. The pain in my legs vanished, replaced by a surge of adrenaline. I reached the passenger side. I tapped on the window. The woman inside jumped. She turned her head sharply. Her eyes were wide with terror. It was Loretta. She unlocked the door. I pulled it open and collapsed into the seat. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Oh my God, Isaiah." She grabbed my face with both hands. Her fingers were ice cold. She was shaking. "You are here," she whispered. "You are really here." "I am here," I rasped. "Drive." She didn't ask questions. She put the car in gear. She looked at the exit ramp. "There is a booth," she said, her voice tight. "There is a guard at the booth." I saw him checking IDs when I came in. "Does he have a gate?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "A drop arm." "Just drive," I said. "Act normal." She eased the car forward. The tires squeaked on the smooth concrete. We drove up the ramp toward the daylight. The sudden brightness hurt my eyes. The rain was still falling hard, turning the world into a gray blur. We pulled up to the booth. The guard was inside. He was watching a small TV screen, probably watching the news about the fire alarm. He looked bored. Loretta rolled down her window. The rain blew in, soaking her sleeve. "Ticket," the guard said without looking up. Loretta handed him the ticket she had pulled when she entered. Her hand was shaking so bad the paper rattled. He took it. He put it in the machine. The machine beeped. $3, he said. Loretta fumbled in her purse. She dropped a coin. It rolled under the seat. "Take your time, lady." The guard sighed. He finally looked at her. Then he looked at me. I froze. I was wearing the jumpsuit, the cap, the sunglasses. I looked like a man in a disguise because I was a man in a disguise. "Working hard or hardly working?" the guard asked, looking at my uniform. "Shift change," I grunted, looking out the side window. He chuckled. "Yeah, I hear that. Hell of a day with that alarm, huh?" "Yeah," I said. "Hell of a day." Loretta found $3 bills. She handed them to him. He took the money. He pressed a button. The red arm lifted. "Have a good one," he said. "You too," Loretta whispered. She pressed the gas. The car rolled forward. We passed under the gate. We passed the concrete barriers. We hit the street. The wipers swished back and forth. Swish, swish, swish. We were moving. We were in traffic. We were just another gray car in a city full of gray cars. Loretta started to cry. She didn't make a sound. The tears just rolled down her cheeks. She kept both hands on the wheel, gripping it so tight her knuckles were yellow. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." I looked back at the hospital. It loomed behind us, a massive tower of glass and steel. Somewhere on the 4th floor, Marcus was checking his watch. Somewhere in that building, my empty bed was waiting. "Don't look back," I said. "Never look back." I reached over and covered her hand with mine. "Where to?" she asked, sniffing. "The airport," I said. "But take the side streets. No highways. Too many cameras on the highways." She nodded. She turned right down a narrow avenue lined with old trees. I leaned my head back against the seat. I closed my eyes. My body was throbbing. My head was pounding. But I felt light, lighter than I had felt in 20 years. I reached into the pocket of the jumpsuit. I pulled out the burner phone Hattie had bought for me. "Are you going to call them?" Loretta asked, glancing at the phone. "Not yet," I said. "Not until we are in the air. I want them to sweat. I want them to walk into that room and find nothing but empty sheets. I want them to feel the panic I felt." I thought. "I want them to know what it feels like to have the floor drop out from under you." We drove in silence for a long time. The rhythm of the rain and the hum of the engine were a lullaby. I was exhausted, but I couldn't sleep. I had to stay alert. We weren't safe yet. "Isaiah," Loretta said softly. "Yeah, did you really mean it? About the house in Portugal?" I opened my eyes. I looked at her. Her profile was sharp against the gray light of the window. She was still beautiful to me, even with the worry lines, even with the tears. "I meant every word," I said. "I bought it 20 years ago. It is an old farmhouse, stone walls, olive trees. It overlooks the river. It needs a lot of work. The roof leaks and the plumbing is ancient." She smiled, a real smile. "You always did like a fixer-upper," she said. "I like building things," I said. "I like making things strong. And we are going to make us strong again, Loretta. You and me." We turned onto a busy boulevard. The traffic was heavy. Red taillights stretched out as far as I could see. "We are going to be okay," she said. "Yeah," I said. "We are going to be okay. But first we had to get through the airport. We had to get through security. We had to get on that plane before Marcus called the police. We had to disappear before the world realized Isaiah Washington was missing." "Step on it," I said. Loretta pressed the gas. The car surged forward into the rain. The rain at O'Hare Airport was horizontal. It swept across the runways like gray curtains and hammered against the roof of our rental car. Loretta navigated the maze of concrete ramps toward Terminal 5. Her hands were still white on the steering wheel. Every time we passed a police cruiser parked on the shoulder, I felt her breath hitch. To us, every blue light was an accusation. Every siren was a hunt. We pulled into the rental car return lane. It was chaos. People were shouting and honking and dragging luggage through the slush. It was the perfect cover. In the middle of a storm, nobody looks closely at two old people moving slow. Loretta turned off the engine. The silence inside the car was sudden and heavy. "We have to hurry," she whispered, checking her watch. "It is 3:45. Marcus will be at the hospital in 15 minutes. When he sees that empty bed, he is going to scream the roof down." I nodded. I reached into the back seat. Loretta had packed a bag for me. Not a suitcase, but a simple canvas duffel. Inside was a pair of corduroy trousers, a flannel shirt, and a tweed jacket. It was the kind of clothes a retired professor would wear, not a billionaire construction mogul. I stripped off the gray janitor jumpsuit right there in the front seat. It was awkward. My legs cramped. My bad arm shook. But I got it off. I stuffed it into the trash bag we had brought. I pulled on the trousers. I buttoned the shirt. My fingers were clumsy, but Loretta reached over and did the top buttons for me. Her eyes were focused on the task, but I saw the fear trembling in her chin. "You look handsome," she lied. "You look like you are going on a vacation." "I look like I am running for my life," I said. "Because I am." We got out of the car. The wind hit us instantly. It bit through my new jacket. I grabbed the duffel bag, but Loretta took it from me. "I got the bags," she said firmly. "You just walk. Lean on me. If anyone asks, you are recovering from surgery." Which is the truth. We walked into the terminal. The noise was a physical wall. Announcements blared over the loudspeakers. Babies cried. Suitcase wheels rumbled on the tile floor. It was sensory overload after weeks in the quiet hospital room. I felt dizzy. The lights were too bright. The faces were blurring together. "Lean on me, Isaiah," Loretta whispered. "Just put one foot in front of the other." I leaned on her. She was small, but she was strong. She was the steel beam holding up the crumbling structure of my body. We navigated the crowd. I pulled my flat cap down low. I kept my sunglasses on even though we were indoors. I hoped people just thought I was blind or eccentric. We reached the security checkpoint. The line was long. It snaked back and forth between the ropes. We joined the queue. I looked at the clock on the wall. 3:55. 5 minutes. We inched forward. Every minute felt like an hour. I scanned the crowd. I looked for uniforms. I looked for men in suits talking into earpieces. I expected to see Marcus running through the doors pointing at me. I expected to see Dr. Sterling with a syringe. Paranoia is a powerful hallucination. We finally reached the TSA agent. He was a young man with tired eyes. He looked at us. He looked at my sunglasses. "Please remove your glasses, sir," he said mechanically. My heart stopped. If I took them off, he would see my eyes. He would see the fear, and maybe he would recognize me. My face had been in the business pages of the Tribune 1,000 times. "I have an eye infection," I lied. My voice was a croak. "The light hurts." The agent sighed. He didn't care. He just wanted to go home. "Fine," he said. "Passport." I handed it to him. It was my real passport. We didn't have fake ones. This was the biggest risk. If Marcus had called the police early, if he had flagged my name, the computer would flash red right now. The agent took the blue book. He slid it into the scanner. I held my breath. I listened for the beep. Beep. It was a green light sound. A happy sound. The agent looked at the screen. Then he looked at me. "Isaiah Washington," he read. I froze. "You related to the construction guy?" he asked. "The one who built the Millennium Tower." "I am his cousin," I said quickly. "Distant cousin." The agent chuckled, handing me back the passport. "Must be nice," he said. "I bet he is sitting on a beach somewhere drinking margaritas while we are stuck in this snow. If only you knew," I thought. "Have a nice flight," he said, waving us through. We walked past him. We put our bags on the belt. We walked through the body scanner. I held my breath again, waiting for alarms. But there was silence. We were through. We collected our bags. We walked toward gate M12. It was at the far end of the terminal. The walk was grueling. My hip was throbbing with a dull, rhythmic ache. I was sweating through my flannel shirt. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. We reached the gate area. It was 4:10. Marcus was in the room now. I knew it. I could feel it. I closed my eyes and I saw it clearly. I saw him opening the door. I saw him looking at the empty bed. I saw him checking the bathroom. I saw the realization hit him. The panic. The rage. He was screaming at the nurses right now. He was calling security. He was calling the police. "They are coming," I whispered to Loretta. "He knows." "I know," she said, squeezing my hand. "But look," she pointed out the window. A massive white plane was sitting at the jet bridge, the TAP Air Portugal flight to Lisbon. "They are boarding," she said. We walked to the desk. We handed over our boarding passes. The attendant scanned them. "Welcome aboard, Mr. and Mrs. Washington," she smiled. We walked down the jet bridge. The tunnel narrowed. The air got warmer. We stepped onto the plane. It wasn't until I sat down in seat 4A that I let myself breathe. I buckled the seatbelt. I pulled it tight. It felt like a hug. Loretta sat next to me. She took my hand. Her palm was sweating. "We made it," she whispered. "Not yet," I said, looking out the window. "We are still on the ground. They can still stop the plane." We sat there for 20 minutes. The plane filled up. Every time a new passenger walked down the aisle, I tensed up, expecting to see a police badge. Then the pilot's voice came over the intercom. "Folks, we have a bit of a delay due to weather. We are fourth in line for de-icing." A delay. My stomach dropped. A delay was time. Time was the enemy. Suddenly, the burner phone in my jacket pocket vibrated. It was a long, angry buzz. I pulled it out. It was a text message. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew who it was. I opened it. "Where are you?" It was in all caps. I didn't answer. Another text came through a second later. "The hospital says you walked out. You can't walk. This is insane, Dad. Answer me." And then another. "If you don't answer in 5 minutes, I am calling the police. I am reporting you kidnapped." I showed the phone to Loretta. She read the messages. Her face went pale. "He thinks you were kidnapped," she said. "He is trying to spin the narrative," I said. "If I was kidnapped, he can freeze the accounts to protect the assets. He is smart. Evil, but smart." The phone buzzed again. "Sarah is crying. Mom is gone too." "What did you do?" I turned the phone off. I couldn't listen to him anymore. I couldn't let his poison into my head. Just then the plane lurched forward. The engines whined. A low, powerful rumble that shook the floor. "Flight attendants, prepare for departure," the pilot said. We were moving. We were backing away from the gate. We were disconnecting from the umbilical cord that tied us to Chicago. I looked out the window as the terminal slid away. I saw the rain blurring the lights. I saw the city in the distance, a gray smudge against the dark sky. Goodbye, Marcus, I thought. Goodbye, Kendra. Goodbye, Isaiah Washington, the CEO. The plane taxied to the runway. The engines roared to full power. I felt the acceleration press me back into the seat. It was a crushing force, a beautiful force. We lifted off. The wheels left the ground. The bumpiness of the runway vanished, replaced by the smooth cushion of the air. We rose into the clouds. The gray turned to white, and then suddenly we broke through. The sun was shining up here. It was golden and bright and endless. I looked at Loretta. She was crying again, but she was smiling through the tears. "We are flying," she whispered. "We are free," I said. And for the first time in 3 weeks, I closed my eyes and I slept. I didn't sleep like a man in a coma. I slept like a man who had worked a hard day and earned his rest. I woke up somewhere over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The cabin was dark. Most of the window shades were down, and the only light came from the small reading lamps scattered here and there like stars in a black sky. The hum of the engines was a steady, comforting vibration that resonated in my bones. I looked to my left. Loretta was asleep. Her head was resting on a pillow she had propped against the window. Her mouth was slightly open and she was breathing deeply. It was the first time in 10 years I had seen her sleep without a frown line etched between her eyebrows. She looked younger. She looked peaceful. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the burner phone. It felt heavy in my hand, not because of its weight, but because of what it held. It was a grenade, and the pin had been pulled hours ago. I hesitated for a moment. Part of me wanted to just drop it into the glass of water on my tray table. Part of me wanted to let the silence be the final word. But the father in me, the man who had built skyscrapers from mud, needed to finish the job. I needed to pour the final layer of concrete to seal the tomb. I held the power button. The screen lit up with a harsh blue glow that made me squint. The phone vibrated instantly. It buzzed against my palm like an angry hornet. It didn't stop. It buzzed and buzzed and buzzed as the network connected and the backlog of messages flooded in. 57 missed calls, 82 text messages, 14 voicemails. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't need to hear his voice screaming. I went straight to the texts. I started at the bottom, the ones sent right after our plane took off. "Dad, please call me. We are worried sick. The police are looking for you." That was the first phase. The fake concern. The phase where he thought he could still manipulate me. "Dad, this isn't funny. You are sick. You have brain damage. You are wandering around confused. Tell us where you are so we can help you." The gaslighting phase. Trying to make me doubt my own mind. I scrolled up. The timestamp showed the progression of his panic. This was around 6 in the evening back in Chicago. This must have been when he went to the bank. "Dad, the accounts are locked." "Why are the accounts locked?" "Franklin won't take my calls. Fix this now." The anger phase. The entitlement was bleeding through. He wasn't asking about my health anymore. He was screaming about his money. Then came the threats. "If you don't unlock the accounts by morning, I am filing a motion for emergency guardianship. I will have you declared mentally incompetent in absentia. I will have the police track your phone. I will have you arrested for embezzlement. You can't steal my inheritance." Steal his inheritance. The audacity of it almost made me laugh out loud in the quiet cabin. He thought the money I earned with my sweat was his birthright. He thought the empire I built was his toy to break. I kept scrolling. The messages from Kendra were different. They were shorter. "Daddy, please. Dante is freaking out. He says we are going to lose the house. Please just call." She was still worrying about Dante. She was still worrying about the house. Not once did she ask why I left. Not once did she ask if I was okay. She just wanted the flow of cash to turn back on. I reached the most recent messages. The ones sent just an hour ago. The tone had changed again. It wasn't anger anymore. It was pure, unadulterated terror. "Dad, please. You don't understand. I owe people money. Bad people. They know you are gone. They know I can't pay. They are going to hurt me, Dad. They are going to kill me. Please, just transfer the 4 million. I will do anything. I will sign anything. Just save me." I stared at those words. Just save me. I had saved him his whole life. I saved him from failing math. I saved him from drunk driving charges. I saved him from bad business deals. I had spent 30 years being his safety net. And because of that, he never learned how to fall. He never learned that the ground is hard and that gravity doesn't care who your father is. If I saved him now, I would just be delaying the inevitable. If I wired him the money, he would just gamble it away again or lose it to another scam. and in 6 months he would be back with his hand out waiting for me to die. I looked at Loretta sleeping beside me. I looked at the peace on her face. If I answered that text, if I engaged with him, the peace would end. The drama would follow us to Portugal. It would follow us to the grave. I had to cut the cord. I had to sever the limb to save the body. I opened a new message. I typed slowly. My thumb was still stiff and the keys were small, but I was precise. I didn't want to waste a single word. Marcus. I typed his name first. Not son, Marcus. I am writing this from 30,000 feet. By the time you read this, your mother and I will be in a place you will never find. I paused. I pictured him reading this. I pictured him staring at his phone in his empty penthouse surrounded by his debts. I was never in a coma. I was awake from the moment you walked into my room. I heard you call me a vegetable. I heard you plan to put your mother in Shady Grove. I heard you laugh about selling my company for scrap. I took a breath. The air in the cabin was dry. I heard you bargaining with the loan shark. I know about the 4 million. I know about the gambling. I let that sink in. I wanted him to know that there were no secrets left. You said my life was worth nothing. You said I should just die so you could live. Well, I have news for you. I chose to live. I typed the final blow. The kill shot. Franklin has liquidized the reserve accounts. The trusts have been dissolved. The safety deposit boxes at First National are empty. The deeds to the properties are in my bag. You have nothing, Marcus. You have no inheritance. You have no safety net. You are a man of 40 years old, and today is the first day of your life that you are truly on your own. I hesitated. Was it too cruel? Was it too hard? I looked at my hand. The hand he wanted to crush to test for a coma. Figure it out. That is my final gift to you. The gift of necessity. Goodbye. I read it over once. It was cold. It was hard. It was fair. I pressed send. The little arrow on the screen whooshed away. Message sent. I watched the screen. I knew he was staring at it. I knew he was typing a frantic reply. I knew he was screaming. The phone buzzed. Dad, wait. I didn't wait. I turned the phone over. I popped the back cover off. I pulled out the battery. Then I took the tiny SIM card, the little chip that connected me to that life, and I snapped it in half. It made a sharp plastic crack sound. I put the pieces in a sick bag. I folded it up. I sat back in my seat. It was done. The line was dead. The bridge was burned. I looked out the window. The sky was starting to turn purple in the east. The sun was coming. A new day. A new continent. A new life. Loretta stirred beside me. She opened her eyes. She looked at me, and then she looked at the disassembled phone on my tray table. She didn't ask what I did. She knew. She reached out and took my hand. "Are you okay?" she whispered. I looked at the broken pieces of plastic. I thought about Marcus. I hoped he would survive. I hoped the fear would make him strong. I hoped that one day he would understand. But whether he did or not was no longer my business. "I am okay," I said. "I am finally okay." 6 months is a long time in the life of a man who thought he was dying. It is enough time for the snow to melt in Chicago and for the grapes to ripen in the Douro Valley. It is enough time for a broken leg to heal and for a broken heart to scar over. I am sitting on a stone wall overlooking the river. The sun is setting and it paints the water in shades of gold and ruby. The air here smells different. It doesn't smell of diesel and stress. It smells of grilled sardines and salt water and old stone. Below me, the boats drift lazily down the current, carrying tourists who wave at me. I wave back. They see an old local man enjoying the evening. They don't see Isaiah Washington, the construction tycoon. They don't see a ghost. My legs are strong again. The cobblestone streets of Porto are steep. They demand work. Every morning, Loretta and I walk down to the market to buy bread and cheese. We walk up the hills carrying our bags. At first, I had to stop every few blocks. I had to lean on her. Now I can walk for miles. The pain in my hip is just a memory, a dull echo that only reminds me I am alive. Loretta is inside our small house. It is a farmhouse just like I told her. It has thick granite walls that keep it cool in the summer. It has a garden where she grows tomatoes and basil. I can hear her singing. She is humming a song from our wedding day. She hasn't hummed that song in 20 years. We live simply here. We don't have a staff. We don't have drivers. I fixed the leaky faucets myself. I painted the shutters blue last week. There is a satisfaction in sanding wood and applying paint that closing $1 million deal never gave me. It is honest work. It is work that stays done. We don't talk much about Chicago. We don't talk about the life we left behind. It feels like a movie we watched a long time ago. But sometimes the news finds us. Franklin came to visit last month. He sat right here on this wall with me, sharing a bottle of green wine. He looked tired. He told me the news. Marcus was arrested 3 weeks after we left. The loan sharks didn't get him, but the FBI did. He tried to forge my signature on a wire transfer to pay his debts. He was sloppy. He was desperate. He is currently awaiting trial for wire fraud and identity theft. Franklin said he looks thin. He said he looks old. I didn't smile when I heard that. I didn't cheer. I just looked at the river. A father never wants to see his son in chains, even if the son forged the links himself. But I didn't offer to bail him out. I didn't offer to pay for his lawyer. He wanted to be the man of the house. Now he is the man of the cell block. He is finally learning the lesson I should have taught him when he was 12. Actions have consequences. And Kendra, Franklin told me she lost the house. Dante left her as soon as the money dried up. He filed for divorce and took the car. She is living in a small apartment in the suburbs, working as a receptionist at a dental office. She called Franklin begging for my number. He didn't give it to her. She is working, I asked Franklin. She is, he said. 8 to 5. She hates it. Good, I said. Let her hate it. Let her feel the tired in her feet. Let her understand what $1 actually costs. Maybe in a few years, if she is still working, if she has built some character, maybe then I will send a letter. But not today. Franklin left the next day. He promised to keep our secret. He is a good friend, the only friend from that life who made the transition to this one. I finish my wine. The sun has dipped below the horizon now. The lights of the city are twinkling on the other side of the river. It is beautiful. It is peaceful. Loretta comes out onto the terrace. She brings a bowl of olives and 2 fresh glasses. She sits next to me. She puts her hand on my knee. Her hands are rougher now from the gardening, but I love them more. They are real hands. What are you thinking about, she asks. And I am thinking about value, I say. I used to think value was a number on a balance sheet. I used to think it was the height of a building or the brand of a car. But I was wrong. Value is this. It is the ability to sit next to the woman you love and not look at your watch. It is the ability to sleep at night without medication. It is the freedom to be nobody so you can finally be yourself. Do you miss them, she asks softly. She knows who I mean. I miss who they were, I say. I miss the little boy who played catch. I miss the little girl who danced in the kitchen. But those people are gone, Loretta. They were gone a long time before we got on that plane. She nods. She understands. She misses them too, but she loves the peace more. We sit in silence for a long time. The night gets cooler. I put my arm around her shoulders. She leans into me. We fit together perfectly, just like bricks in a wall. We survived, Loretta. We survived the poverty. We survived the success. And we survived the betrayal. Now we just have to survive the good life. I look at my hands. They are spotted with age. They are scarred, but they are steady. I built a lot of things in my life. I built towers that scrape the sky. I built bridges that span rivers. But this life here, this quiet, modest life in a stone house on a hill, this is the best thing I ever built. And the best part is nobody can take it away from me. Marcus can't sell it. The bank can't foreclose on it. It is ours, owned free and clear. I take a deep breath of the cool night air. I taste the salt. I taste the freedom. My name is Isaiah Washington. I was dead for 3 weeks, but I have never been more alive than I am right now. We often believe that loving our family means shielding them from every storm, but Isaiah's journey teaches us a painful truth. A life without struggle creates a soul without strength. By removing every obstacle for his children, he didn't build their future. He crippled their character. True legacy isn't the bank account you leave behind, but the resilience you instill in those you love. Never let the guilt of blood obligation keep you trapped in a cage of disrespect. You have the divine right to walk away from anyone, even your own children, who measures your worth solely by your utility. If this story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to make the hard choice to choose your peace over toxic family demands, tell us your story in the comments below. Don't forget to like and follow for more sagas of justice and redemption.